Hello all. Been trying to make you guys a video about hypnotism and self-hypnosis and ran into a little bit of a problem. I wanted to use a particular term, but it's not an appropriate term to use. So I did this whole video for you and have to switch up. Anyway, hypnotism enters a level of training in the martial arts and otherwise. It gives you elements of self-control and self-mastery that are very important if you're going to attain higher levels of proficiency. The problem with it is that it's often hopelessly complicated the way people are taught to approach it, and makes it, through that obfuscation, unapproachable. My goal is to teach you in very simple terms how to use that technique. Now, let's be perfectly clear here. These skills are not easy to acquire and learn because not many people understand them. I was taught through my own Buddhist practice, but also through a Sikh breathing and yoga art. That was a very small art I was taught by somebody directly. And I was fortunate because I later found out that when you hear about things like, for example, in the Bujinkan, the Kuji, and other of these sort of fantastical notions that people dangle as a carrot, they're actually, once you understand them, they're not difficult. And I'm going to give you a very simple way to use them. Okay? So, first we have to understand what it is so we can understand how to use it. You have different filters, and language, by and large, by itself, will generally go to your conscious mind. Okay? The idea is to bypass that. And it's done every day. The media does it constantly. A lot of other things that are attempting to brainwash and program people operate the same way. The idea being to find a way to sneak through your conscious filter and program your behavior reflexively through your subconscious. The way this is done is to take at least one fluid medium like language and to use other aspects together with language and impressions so that it slips through your normal range. By slipping through your normal range, it has a tendency to go into your subconscious and allow you to utilize on that level. Now, it's interesting how this is done. And one of the problems I had yesterday was I wanted to present the term jingoism. Jingoism is related to patriotism and chauvinism, but my intention was to use the term the way it was originally constructed. It was done to create a song for people, to reinforce patriotic sentiments. I believe it was against the Russians in the mid 1800s. So the idea, correctly, was instead of just saying something that was populist or just creating a song, which is how the Star Spangled Banner became famous, if you combine the two, you would get something better or more deeply rooted. And that's absolutely the best example I can think of for how hypnotism works on a base level. So forget the chauvinist patriotic understanding of the term, but jingo, like making a melodic statement using language and rhythm. Okay, then you add an impression to that perhaps, and you've got all the tools you need to create a subconscious, willful intention. Here's what you do. When you are in a particular state that you need the reinforcement, that is when you create. And remember, when you're creating these things, they're like when you have a dream in a way. It won't make sense to you directly in person to person transmission. It only makes sense when you're in that state, which is exactly how it should be. So, for example, it will often sound very silly. I'll give you an example of some of the types that I use for that. When I want to regulate my breathing, okay, maybe anxiety or something of that nature, when I'm exercising, I will say to myself, don't cogitate, regulate. Don't cogitate, regulate. Now, in saying that, I'm not just speaking it, but I'm also, it's rhythmic. Don't, dun, 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 okay? The words mean something as well. And I have an impression in my mind of regulating, okay? And that is allowing me to use that to reinforce and to push an extra level in my willfulness as I'm trying to deal with, in this case, anxiety. Another example would be I sometimes when I'm really struggling with exercise, I'll say, show me your beautiful mind. And again, it sounds very silly, but it creates this impression of I'm trying something greater than me looking down upon, and like almost paternalistically, it creates an energy for me and a willfulness to keep going. Does this stuff work? It works incredibly well, but you have to understand something about that as well. It works over the long term. In my case, I was basically destroyed and crippled. Got to a point where I weighed 350 pounds, and in order to be able to, I was hit by a vehicle. To recover, I had a choice. I could try and really risk a lot, or I could just accept my handicaps. My goal, being a warrior, was to fight it. And in order to do that, I openly risked, my demise. I was not healthy or physically fit, and I was pushing myself because I had to. You can get a heart attack that way. All kinds of bad things can happen to you. But using this allowed me the capability to retain and not retain, but to bring back enough that I was able to get myself in reasonably good shape. Okay, from 350 pounds, I'm now about 275, but a lot more muscle than fat, and I can do a lot of things. I have some more work to do, but you get the point. So, yes, it works. And in your darkest hours, you're going to need something like that. And learning how to really create willful intention, okay, will really make you a better martial artist. So, it's definitely something that you should do. On a higher level, you can do things with this all the way up. I'm going to give you another level here, and then I'm not going to give you anything else yet because the other stuff past that level can be a little dangerous. When I put the materials out for the system, if you're supervised a little bit more directly by video, maybe I'll show you more. But you can hypnotize yourself according to your affect, okay? And the way I did that was a long time ago. It's been many years, but it still works for me. I started with a number 5, which is just in the middle, kind of how I'm talking to you. Anything below that to 1 was more relaxed. Anything above that was more up and intense, okay? I learned that I put a sound on with an alarm, and that alarm sound triggers my recalibrating. When I hear that alarm, I'll say, I'm going to be at a 5. I'm going to be at a 3. I'm going to be at a 5. And that holds to this day. So you can use this in all kinds of things and use it regularly, because what it basically does is you begin to take control over your whole being, okay? And you don't give away all that intentionality to the outside world, which does not have your own interests at heart, okay? Every time you hear some sort of commercial that is using a rhythmic, a combination of words and sounds, not quite a song, but just sort of a little jingle, okay? That's trying sneaking you through. So, don't you feel like a burger today? That kind of thing. So you can take control of that if you take it out of the hands of others and you do it yourself. I would recommend you start and remembering, and this is very important, do the work when you're in the right state. Otherwise, it won't work, okay? I cannot say, well, tonight when I hit the weights, I'm going to call myself, say, you're a real tiger. It doesn't work that way. When you're on the weights, manifest a positive, okay? Get your energy up and then make the statement. And that will help you stick. And then use it, okay? When you get to that point where maybe you're trying to get that last rep out, use it, what you created. So you have two levels here. You have very basic level when you're doing whatever you want to do, and you have a more long-term level where you can actually use something like your affect, which is a little bit more comprehensive, and control that. Later on, if you stick with this, there's all kinds of things you can do esoterically, bringing your energy up and outwards, and creating all different types of experiences, intentions, and abilities even. But you have to prep for it, because at a certain level it becomes dangerous if you're not prepared otherwise. So I want to think if there's anything else that you should be aware of. Basically start here, and we'll see how things progress. I will be putting more material out, and eventually I will make it accessible to people if I can put the right controls in line. I don't want anybody to hurt themselves. That's the main reason I don't just share it outright. Okay, I'm not one of these people that's going to ask you for a lot to share things. My attitude is I want the martial arts community in general to grow and become stronger. Okay, and especially given the proliferation of a lot of negative practices I see nowadays, people just are not fighting hard enough. Anyway, different subject, but it'll be out there. Try this for now.